You look beautiful. Because you look beautiful, I'm going to reward you. I would like you to introduce you to another group of beautiful people. And these beautiful people that you see are women from a group of villages out in the Eastern Cape below the Drakensberg called Stolini. They are mothers, they are women, they are daughters of other people, and they are wives. I'm going to tell you a story behind these people. And I also want you to meet a group of men and women from the Deciso Cooperative, which I helped to set up. I met all these people on August 10th, 2009. I was introduced to the gentleman in the middle with a scarf that looks like a South African flag by a Zimbabwean farmer called Bruce Brown. Bruce teaches rotational grazing to white commercial farmers out in the Karoo. And I taught the course with him to some farmers in the Karoo there. And he said to me there is black farmers on communal land who are struggling, to understand rotational grazing simply because I'm a white farmer from Zimbabwe. I cannot understand this process, so I cannot pass on the information. I want you to do it for me. So that's how I met these people. And when I met them, these people on August 10th, I asked these women, how was the Women's Day, the previous day? And they said to me, no, we're not that kind of women. Women's Day is not for women like us. And here the government doesn't come, and support things like Women's Day. So that day I learned two words. One word that I learned that there's a word called government. And government is like, this tide that lifts all boats equally, which I didn't believe. I also learned another word, which is disconnect. So I knew that these people are disconnected from the rest of us. But what struck me, about all of this is the fact that these people have got arable land, and it's land which you can farm and live off it. They also have access to cattle, and it's good-looking cattle. The condition of those cattle, you can get meat out of them. They've got sheep. This lady that you see on this picture is a sub-headman, because in these villages there's a chief, 7, 10 villages, and there's a headman, and there's also a sub-headman. This lady is a sub-headman. I'm showing you this picture because this woman in this picture, that's her sheep, and that's about a quarter of the flock. This lady has got 360 sheep. And this lady has got a son, and her son is disabled. The son is earning a grant. This lady, every month, she goes and collects a grant about 70 kilometers from her village. And she spends about 60 rands out of the 230 odd rands she gets just on transport without buying anything for this kid. So I wondered in my head, what would happen if this lady, instead of collecting the grant, she actually traded on some of the animals and the wool that these animals, can produce? These people, the houses at the top is the back of the village. These people have got access to water. They've got access to pasture. This is Northeastern Cape. These are grasslands of the Northeastern Cape. They even have the cranes right at their doorstep. When you stand on the village, you can see the blue cranes. You can see 5,000 crested cranes. They are. And they are in the village, just below the village. This is last year, August. We took this picture. We're standing outside Ghana. And that's a Drakensberg mountain that you see at the top. So the beauty is there. And strangely, people keep telling me that these people are poor. I don't understand. Maybe you do. So I set up, an organization together with a group of people. And as we set up this organization, I convened a conversation, because in this conversation I wanted to say to the people of Stoleni villages and the 24 other villages that are part of our group, to say to them, we've got to move ourselves from this either or future and move ourselves into and in both. We've got to move ourselves from the either or past into the and in both future. And for me, that was very important, because that is the thing that was going to get us going. So, early this year, I flew from Port Alfred on a small plane to a little town called Elliot, which is not far from the village, because we were going to drive to the village. And as I was coming out of that village, I saw these cows, they were grazing. As I was coming out of this landing strip, I saw these cows, they were grazing, And I stood, in front of this little cow, and we had a conversation. And the cow reminded me, something that I had forgotten, And this conversation began because I was in Oregon, last year, and I was in a farm where they produce steers for a feedlot, and I was charged by a steer, which was funny. So this cow says to me, when I looked at this cow and it came and it stood in front of me, I remembered, that farmlands are all different. Farming communities are different. Farmlands and farming communities are fascinating simply because they're different. Each has a unique, unfair advantage over the next. So that village, those villages that we work with, I know they've got an unfair advantage, but they just don't see it. So it's my job to find it. So why are places so different? They're different because of the context. I'll let you read what's underneath the context. They're also different because the people who live there, they've got a context, but they also have intentions about what they want to do. They're different because they are built around particular stories, and those stories, they differ from one place to another. But the conundrum that we have, we so often treat farmlands and farming communities as if they're all the same, or if they should be the same. We ignore the context deliberately, we ignore the stories and the intentions. Now, on the same grasslands where I was standing, I also came across, this other guy at the bottom. We had a second conversation. And this guy reminded me of something that I'm seeing, and I'm seeing a lot, which is this notion of productionism. I'm going to explain it. And the fallacy of composition. Those are big words. Let me explain them simply to you. Imagine that you went to a concert and everybody is sitting on the grass in this concert. Everybody can see the stage, but the guy at the front decides that he's going to stand up. So when the guy at the front stands up, there are people behind him who don't see, so they stand up too. So eventually everybody is standing up, but standing up doesn't mean all of us are going to see the stage equally. That's the fallacy of composition. We keep telling small people that if they became farmers like commercial farmers, they're going to succeed. But that is not true. So we say produce, 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 which comes the productionism that we push it. And because we want to feed this fallacy of composition. So we need to change that fallacy of composition. So I say, there's a bedrock principle. For things to change, somebody somewhere has got to start acting differently. So I decided that we need to find connections. The gentleman that you see in the middle is used by everybody from the World Bank, but is known by very few. He sets up cooperative. He helps us set up this is a cooperative. He lives in Wisconsin. His name is E.G. On the right-hand side is one of the well-known farmers in the U.S. He's a teacher. He teaches soil science at University of Wisconsin. His name is Dick Cates. He's also a grass-fed beef farmer. And I work with Dick, E.G., and a whole lot of other people because I think if we do holistic land and livestock management, we're creating environmental well-being, we're creating social equity, we're creating reliable prosperity, we're creating resilience of communities. That's at Drakensberg again, the same time last year. So I set up Indra Trust as this holding togetherness. Let's come together as people, so that we create the connections, create an ecology of context, lots of things, place and culture, climate and soil, moved by the intentions, smallholder and consumers, linked by a narrative, very important, agroecological approach to development. Anybody who understands our culture, they would know that, young women who are not married, their breasts, they look like that. They're stiff. So, in Northeastern Cape, there's a place called Nocha. They call that Amabele Ndumbi. The breast. So at Indra Trust, these are the things that we're trying to do. Building capacity, creating social ties. And we do this thing that everybody wants, which is production. The last thing that I just want to talk about is this thing that changes in our best interest, because if we don't change, we are bound, to experience what Frederick Douglass, explains, and let you read.